Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by Attitude Magazine.
Hello, my name is Annie Rogers, and on behalf of the Attitude team, I'm so pleased to welcome you to today's ADHD Experts presentation titled Revenge Bedtime Procrastination: How Women with ADHD Can Break the Cycle of Delayed Sleep and Stress. Revenge bedtime procrastination entered the popular lexicon really during the pandemic, when the daily stress and pressures skyrocketed for so many people, especially women with ADHD. Basically, it's when you're so overwhelmed during the day with work, parenting, household, and other responsibilities that there's no time for you. Essentially, you exact revenge on all of life's stresses and obligations by turning bedtime into me time instead of sleep time. Of course, this habit comes with consequences, most notably sleep deprivation, which worsens ADHD symptoms and undercuts executive functions. So in this webinar, we will explore the phenomenon of revenge bedtime procrastination and how to replace poor sleep and stress with healthier habits. We're very fortunate to have Dr. Christine Lee and Tracy Otsuka with us today to lead this presentation. Dr. Lee is a New York state licensed clinical psychologist and the procrastination coach online. Dr. Lee helps her clients reconnect with their natural abilities and energy so that they can bypass the frustrating cycles of procrastination and shame and work to their potential. For more than 20 years, Dr. Lee has worked with college, graduate, and professional students and other adults in private practice. She's also served as staff psychologist in counseling service centers at Columbia University Medical School, and Pace University. Dr. Lee is the author of 5-Minute Self-Discipline Exercises: Stay Motivated, Cultivate Good Habits, and Achieve Your Goals. She is the author of the #1 blog in the world on procrastination. And her podcast, Make Time for Success with Dr. Christine Lee, provides quick lessons and interviews with special guests to inspire listeners to live life to the fullest. Excuse me. And Tracy Otsuka is a certified ADHD coach. Her podcast, ADHD for Smartass Women, is ranked in the top 0.5% of all podcasts in the world on any subject. Her listeners are quick-witted, high ability, and like Tracy, see their ADHD traits as more positive than negative. Tracy is also the creator of Your ADHD Brain is A-OK, which uses her patented cartography system to help ADHD women discover their strengths, step into their purpose, and live to their potential. Before I hand over the microphone to Christine and Tracy, I have just a few housekeeping items. First, those of you tuned into our live webinar, welcome. And you may download the slides now by clicking on the Event Resources section of your webinar screen. If you are interested in the Certificate of Attendance option, please look out for instructions in an email you will receive about an hour after we wrap up the live broadcast. If you are listening in replay or podcast mode, please visit attitudemag.com and search for podcast 382 to access the slides, the webinar replay, and the Certificate of Attendance option. Finally, if you support the work we're doing here at Attitude to strengthen the ADHD community, we encourage you to visit attitudemag.com/subscribe and sign up for Attitude Magazine for your family or to share with a teacher or a loved one who could benefit from greater ADHD understanding. And lastly, the sponsor of this week's webinar is Inflow. Inflow is the #1 app to help you manage your ADHD. Developed by leading clinicians, Inflow is a science-based self-help program based on the principles of cognitive behavioral therapy. Download now on the App Store and Google Play Store. Attitude thanks our sponsors for supporting our webinars. Sponsorship has no influence on speaker selection or webinar content. So without further ado, I am so pleased to welcome Christine and Tracy. Thank you so much for joining us today and for leading this discussion on revenge bedtime procrastination.
Thank you so very much. I am delighted to be here with all of you and my wonderful friend, Dr. Christine Lee. Thank you to Annie and Natalie and Wayne and, of course, Susan and everyone at Attitude for all that you do to educate the world about ADHD. It's always a pleasure working with you. So I'm Tracy Otsuka, and we are obviously here to talk about revenge bedtime procrastination. But I want to start with a short story so you know that I know from what I speak. So when I was 15, I was really crafty. I loved to sew, and I would often start a project, and I would totally forget to go to sleep. I would just go through the night. And one day I started after dinner around 9 o'clock. I was making a sundress and I was just going to cut it out, but hyper-focused. And so I'm heads down and I'm sewing, and I'm finally done. And I look at the clock and it's 6 a.m. and I try on the dress, slide. And this is what I see in the mirror. Can you tell? The parrots are all upside down. I was so hyper-focused and likely sleep deprived that I never thought to pause long enough to make sure that what I was creating was actually something I wanted to create. At the time, I didn't know that I had ADHD, but what I did know is that I never wanted to go to sleep. But guess what? Decades later, I've finally been converted and I am now an ambassador for sleep. I figured out why sleep is so important. So what we're going to do today in my part of the presentation is, number one, we're going to talk about what revenge bedtime procrastination is. Number two, we're then going to talk about why we struggle with revenge bedtime procrastination, those of us with ADHD brains. Number three, we're going to talk about why sleep is so important. And then finally, I'm going to introduce you to some revenge bedtime strategies, sleep strategies. Slide. So if you talk to anyone with ADHD, there always seems to be some problem related to sleep. We struggle to fall asleep. By age 30, 70% of ADHD adults, we report that it takes an hour or more to fall asleep. We struggle with staying asleep. We finally fall asleep, but we're restless sleepers, light sleepers, we're tossing and turning. We struggle with getting up in the morning. So we struggle to get to sleep. We're finally asleep and it's time to get up and it's like waking up the dead, right? Anybody here like that? Number four, we struggle with falling asleep when we're bored. And you see students doing this who are in class, right? And their head starts bobbing and all of a sudden they almost crash to the floor. And that brings us to number five, the last kind of sleep disturbance and why we're here today, revenge bedtime procrastination, or RBP. And this one is near and dear to my heart because it's the one I actually struggled with for decades. My parrot dress, it was just the beginning of a long litany of instances where I'd get carried away and I didn't go to sleep until the wee hours of the morning. So what exactly is revenge bedtime procrastination? Slide. One slide before that. Sorry. Yeah, there we go. Revenge bedtime procrastination it isn't about falling asleep, staying asleep, getting up in the morning, or falling asleep when you're bored. No, it's about our inability to get ourselves into bed. And I know it's something that ADHD women really struggle with. So how do I know this? Because I asked them. Slide. So I have a Facebook group, ADHD for Smartass Women. We are 54,000 members strong. And I did a poll in our group and I asked, do you struggle with revenge bedtime procrastination? Now, this is a small sample size, but 2,956 members said yes. 194 members said no. That means that 95% of women who responded to my little survey struggled with revenge bedtime procrastination. So revenge bedtime procrastination. So it's a big problem, right? Revenge bedtime procrastination is when we're so overwhelmed during the day with work and parenting and adulting that there's no time for activities that bring us fulfillment and pleasure. So what do? We stay up way too late pursuing leisure and entertainment, despite the fact that we know we're going to regret it in the morning. Slide. Revenge bedtime procrastination, it can take many forms, but it usually involves technology and it doesn't add much positive to your life. Slide. Mine look like this. Yeah, Love Island. We're in the middle of COVID. My daughter came home from college to finish up her senior year, and all we did was work. So we started watching mindless trash in the evening. And I remember the first episode, my daughter played it, and I'm like, I'm not watching this. This is garbage. But somehow it morphed into hours of mindlessness over a period of several weeks. And towards the end, we'd look up at the clock and it would be 2 a.m., sometimes 3:30 in the morning. But we didn't have anything else to do, right? Slide. So why do those of us with ADHD have such a problem with revenge bedtime procrastination? Slide. Because wherever you go, there you are with your thoughts. Slide. Because if you have ADHD, you don't just have it during the day. You also have it in the evening, right? You're hyperactive. And whether we're talking about hyperactivity in body or mind or both, your brain is always going. It's restless and prone to worry. And if we ruminate and or catastrophize, I always struggle with that word during the day, why wouldn't we do it at night? You jump into bed, everything is quiet, there's no one to disturb you, and there you are with your thoughts. Why would we want to go to bed for that, right? Slide. We also struggle with self-regulation. Our brains are low in dopamine, which is why we procrastinate in the first place. So why wouldn't we procrastinate bedtime just like anything else? Slide. We are trying to avert boredom. And it got worse with COVID because the lines between work and home life got even more blurred, right? We lost the rhythm to our day. There was no structure, no time boundaries. We were stuck at home all the time. So now with COVID, we're even more bored. And going to bed is boring, right? Nothing exciting happens there, usually. Slide. We also struggle with time. We're time blind. We don't see time. We don't feel time passing. We know now and not now, but not much in between. Slide. And why is that? Well, the thought is that the reason we don't see or feel time is because our internal clock or circadian rhythm might be off kilter. And I'm going to talk about more about this in detail in a little bit. Can I get a new slide? We also feel out of control. Slide. Many of us with ADHD, we're overwhelmed, right? We're typically late. The to-dos are piled up. And as women, we also feel bound by a lot of society's rules that leave us not only responsible for our own careers, but also the kids, the home, and the social obligations. We're just trying to feel like we have some control over those last few hours of our day. Slide. Technology has also given us so many new choices, right? And we love the bright sparkly. Why? Because it increases our dopamine. So all of this tech too, it's relatively new, the social media and smartphones. You know, when I was a kid, television used to end at midnight. Do you remember that? I might be dating myself, but television would end and you see all those black squiggly lines, right? And it was over. There was nothing to do. You had to go to bed. Now with cable, there's not just one show that's available at a set time. Slide. Today, you can binge watch an entire season. And what do we have trouble with? Transitions, right? Starting something we don't want to start and stopping something we don't want to stop. When we're all in and interested, we tend to hyperfocus. We want to keep going. Slide. We also don't like being told what to do. Slide. And getting into bed is one more task that we are required to do. We resent it, so we're going to be obstinate, even if it means that the only person who's going to pay the price in the morning is us. Slide. So why else might women with ADHD have problems with revenge bedtime procrastination? Well, stimulant medication might be affecting your sleep. Some of us are really sensitive to stimulants, and so if we take them late in the day, we can't sleep. But I have more to say on that in a little bit. So why is sleep so important, especially to our ADHD brains? Well, it's probably the most effective thing you can do to reset your brain and body health. And I think most of us think, and I know that I did as well, that we just lose consciousness for 7 to 8 hours and then we wake up and we feel better. But it's so much more complex than that. If you don't get enough sleep, you're going to end up with all kinds of health problems. Slide. For example, A weakened immune system, dysregulated metabolism, dysregulated emotions. You're going to be grumpy. Your executive functions are also going to be even more impaired than they normally are with our ADHD brains, right? And that means memory and focus, concentration, our problem solving and learning abilities. They're also going to be affected. Slide. Without good sleep, you are more hyperactive and more inattentive. And if you struggle with any other mental health problems, anxiety, depression, a lack of sleep is going to make it all so much worse. With good sleep, you're even more creative. You're slimmer. You have less food cravings. You have less cancer and dementia, heart attacks, colds, and flus. You're happier and you're less anxious. Slide. I don't know about you, but all my life I've been told, go to sleep. Tracy, why are you still up? Tracy, you're such a night owl. But there's so much life yet to live, right? Between 12 p.m. and 3 a.m. 12 p.m., 12 a.m., and 3 a.m. And sleep was such a waste of life to me, or so I thought, I thought it was my high energy levels, my drivenness, which is a form of hyperactivity. And I thought I just didn't need sleep. Leave me alone already. It was the one thing my husband and I never agreed on. But guess what? I was wrong. Slide. The quality and quantity of your REM sleep is directly proportional to your lifespan. I'm like, what? The quality and quantity of your REM sleep is directly proportional to your lifespan. It scared the crap out of me. REM sleep is the second phase of your sleep cycle. It's when we dream, and a lack of it is associated with emotional dysregulation. So what does that mean? Yeah, REM sleep is basically free overnight therapy. So let's talk strategies, but first I want to say one thing. You are the expert on you. Thank you for catching that slide. Only you know what's going to actually work for you, right? And the only way that you're going to know that something might work for you is if you test the strategy and see for yourself. Sleep experts say that you need 7 to 9 hours. You may need less, you may need more. Listen to your body. So let's talk some strategies for getting into bed and getting some better sleep. Slide. Sleep strategy number 1. You know how we talked about stimulant medication earlier? Well, people with ADHD struggle with ADHD, not only during the day, but also at night, right? They're already diagnosed with ADHD. So rather than think that the ADHD is also causing the ADHD person's sleep problems, what we often hear is that if you're taking stimulant medication, then that must be what's causing your sleep problems. But you know what? Often that's not true. But you can test this theory. Slide. Ask yourself, were the problems there before the stimulant medication? Look, despite the constant warnings about stimulant medication and how it disrupts sleep, many doctors who are expert in ADHD have had success in reducing ADHD sleep-related problems like tossing and turning and being in your head and ruminating, but also getting into bed by prescribing stimulant medication right before bedtime. Look, when stimulant medication works in the daytime, it calms restlessness, right? So why wouldn't it calm restlessness at nighttime too? Hey, it's worth a shot. Slide. Sleep strategy number 2. Follow the same bedtime routine every day. This means going to bed at the same time every night and waking up at the same time in the morning. It shouldn't change much depending on if it's a weekday or a weekend. Now, I can see your face, even though I really can't. I can feel your energy. We hate routines, don't we? We've got that ADHD brain. Don't you dare tell me what to do. We've been told all of our life to go to bed. But what about this? When we're finally told why and it makes sense to us, then we're much more likely to consider trying it. So why is this bedtime routine so important? It's about your circadian clock. So this is the part where I'm going to try to convince you about the importance of getting a good night's sleep. So here we go. Slide. What we do when we're awake is connected to how quickly we fall asleep, whether or not we can stay asleep, and how we feel when we wake up the next morning. Mind-blowing, huh? And this is why. Slide. Your circadian rhythm helps control your daily schedule and when you're going to feel sleepy and when you're going to feel awake. This rhythm is tied to your 24-hour clock, and most living things have one. But guess what governs this clock? Slide. Yep, sunlight. Your circadian rhythm is influenced by outside things like when it's light outside or when it's dark outside. The sun, you see, alerts your whole body to get up. And when that happens, a cellular timer is set off in your body, which dictates when melatonin is going to be released later in the day. So melatonin is the hormone that makes you sleepy, and it's triggered to go off about 12 to 24 hours after you get up. So that means that the wakefulness signal triggers when the sleepiness signal is going to go off. So you wake up, you open your eyes, light comes into your eyes, and an electrical signal is sent to the central clock in your body. We need 2 to 10 minutes of this early morning sunlight in our eyes as close to waking as possible. Other light works too, but it doesn't work nearly as well as early morning sunlight. So what else keeps that clock anchored? Seeing the sunset. So if you're viewing sunlight towards the end of the day, the neurons in your eyes are also signaling to your clock that it's now the end of the day. So if you start to incorporate early morning sunlight and sunsets into your day, your body is going to start adjusting and looking forward to it, which means it's going to be easier and easier to get up in the morning and go to bed at night. And this is because of neuroplasticity. There is plasticity in these circuits. Slide. Sleep strategy number 3, exercise. There is solid, and I know, you probably hate this one, right? But there is solid evidence that exercise helps you fall asleep more quickly and improves sleep quality. It also helps you to learn. It stabilizes your mood. Again, free therapy, right? And it decompresses the mind. The effects of regular aerobic exercise are shown to be comparable to, sleeping pills. Slide. And exercise, guess what? It also affects your circadian clock. So the easiest way to satisfy your exercise and sunlight requirement is to do your workout outside in nature first thing in the morning. Now, studies show that working out at various times affects your body's sleep-wake cycle. So if you exercise first thing in the morning, your body's going to get used to that, right? And it's going to advance your body clock so that you feel more refreshed when you wake up and more tired for bedtime. But what do most of us do instead? We don't wake up and spend time in the early morning sun. We don't go work out. We don't do these things to activate our circadian clock. Instead, we wake up, right? We look at our phone. I couldn't remember what I did first, right? We turn on the morning news. We get ready for our day. We put on our sunglasses. That blocks the good light. We get on our car. We're looking through a windshield. That blocks the good light. We get to work. We're sitting next to a window. That blocks the good light. And then we sit in front of the computer with blue light blocking glasses, which blocks the good light. Yeah, I'm in them right now. We're doing nothing to activate our circadian clock. What you want to do is you want to anchor your clock to a regular sleep schedule. So with revenge bedtime procrastination, it's not that we can't get into bed. It's that we don't want to get into bed. But when someone explains to us why we will feel so much better if we just get into bed and it makes sense to us and we buy off on it, it's so much easier to get into bed. We're connecting to our intention of wanting to feel better. Slide. Sleep strategy number, 4. No technology for at least an hour before bed. I know you hate that one too, but guess what? It's all linked. Slide. Remember when we were talking about setting our circadian clocks in the morning? The other part of the circadian clock equation is that bright light in the evening will screw it up. If you see bright light at night, you're going to want to go to bed later and then wake up later. Of course, not of course, I didn't know this. It doesn't include candles or the fireplace. That doesn't seem to influence our circadian clocks, but bright artificial light does. So if you wake up in the middle of the night and you have to go to the bathroom, don't turn on the lights and heaven forbid, do not bring your phone. This is going to signal to your circadian clock that it's time to get up. Seeing the sunset, however, remember, can protect against the negative effects of light later in the evening. Slide. Sleep strategy number 5. No naps during the day. There are people who swear by naps, but if you're struggling with not being tired at night and not being able to get into bed, this would be the first place to start testing. Slide. And it's probably a good time for me to talk about adenosine. So adenosine is a chemical that we all have in our bodies that signals the body to become sleepy. So the longer we're awake, the more adenosine we build up. But when we sleep, the brain clears out the adenosine. So when you nap, you're opening up the sleep pressure and some of that sleepiness or adenosine is lost. So for obvious reasons, if you're struggling to get into bed and then you nap during the day, you're not going to be tired at all by evening, right? This also means that if you have a really bad night of sleep, you shouldn't sleep in and try to catch up or go to bed earlier than you normally would. But instead, you should get up as close to your normal time as possible and then stay up as close to your normal bedtime as you can. This is for your circadian clock. You don't want to reduce the adenosine. Slide. Sleep strategy number 6. If you don't want to go to bed because you don't want to be alone with your thoughts, keep a journal or a notebook and write down everything that you're worried about before you go to bed. I know whatever we focus on just gets bigger, right? But this is different because you're not focusing on it. You're just getting it out rotely, right? Every worry that's in your brain, you're putting it on paper to save it for the morning. Slide. And this may sound a little wooey, but there are many studies that have shown that keeping one of these journals, it literally decreases the time to go to sleep by as much as 50%. And that's on par with pharmaceuticals like sleeping pills. Look, difficulty and anxiety in the dark is not the same as difficulty and anxiety in the light of day, especially for those of us who catastrophize and ruminate. Everything always seems worse in the middle of the night. Slide. Okay, so now we're at sleep strategy number 7. We are going to remove the bedtime prep resistance. Look, at times I would find myself literally sitting on the couch late at night solely because there was so much resistance to doing those chores to get ready for bed. You know, things like washing your face or brushing your teeth. But we're creatives, right? That is one of the advantages and strengths of our ADHD brain. So how about if we got creative? Slide. Do your bedtime prep early in the evening. Ask yourself, how can I reduce the resistance even further? What small steps can I take that feel like nothing when I'm doing them, but they get me to where I want to go? For example, moving the toothbrush and skincare to the guest bathroom. Look, I'm there many times a night anyway, right? I'm going to the bathroom. So what if I washed my face when I was also washing my hands? What if I threw on moisturizer when I was walking back to the family room? What if I brush my teeth during my next visit to the bathroom? By the way, this also prevents mindless eating because the last thing I want to do is go brush my teeth again. So this one strategy of getting all the bedtime prep done early removes so much resistance to going to bed. Now you just have to walk into the bedroom and jump into bed, right? One step, easy peasy. Slide. And that leads me to my final bedtime sleep strategy. Sorry, took a while to get that out of my brain. And this is probably the most important strategy. It's all about positive emotion because the ADHD brain, we thrive with positive emotion and we wither under negative emotion. So what generates positive emotion for us, which in turn fires our dopamine? Well, interest, right? We have brains of interest. When we're interested in something, we pop into hyperfocus. Fun. We love when things are fun. Challenging. Yeah, we like to be challenged. I will always take the really, really difficult thing, and I'll love to do that, most things, but you give me the easy, everyday, mundane, boring stuff, I don't want to do it. Novelty, right? We like the bright, sparkly, what is new. Slide. So what we're going to do is we're going to put together a game plan that incorporates your intention of getting into bed earlier and uses one or more of your positive emotion triggers. So I want to give you an example. Had enough of Love Island. I started to strategize on how I could get into bed earlier. My intention was to feel better when I woke up. It was my decision. It wasn't my husband nagging me. It wasn't the umpteen articles espousing the importance of sleep. I just knew I didn't want to start my day out stressed and play catch up. And honestly, I had kind of learned about what sleep does for me, right? So it was solely my intention to want this change for myself that worked. I also included fun, challenge, and humor because that's what I know works for my brain. That's what generates positive emotion for me specifically. So I decided that I had to be in bed by midnight. Anything earlier, I knew I just wasn't going to do it. I was being realistic. So I sat back and I thought, well, who else has to be home by midnight? Slide. Yep. Cinderella. Remember her stagecoach turned into a pumpkin after midnight? Well, this is what I did. I set up my Alexa to record a message that played at 11:50 p.m. And this is what it said. Cinderella, you have 10 minutes to get into bed or you are going to turn into a bloody pumpkin. It made me laugh. It still makes me laugh, right? And that cued me up to run around and close all the windows and doors and turn off all the lights. Challenge, right? 5 minutes later, my Alexa is cued to play the sound of church bells. Remember when Cinderella was running down the stairs to church bells? Yeah. Well, my challenge was to be ready to head to bed before those church bells stopped ringing. It made me laugh every time. It still makes me laugh when I hear it. And because I'm laughing, what am I in? Positive emotion, right? And so guess what? I actually do it. I shut the church bells off and I run off to the bedroom. And I know that that is 95% of the battle for me. It's that transition. Because I have to play beat the clock and I'm laughing, I do it. Look, we're all different. What works for me may not work for you, but that challenges you to figure out what system is the system that just might work for you. We are so creative, right? Ideation is one of our greatest strengths. So let's use it. And I'm going to tell you, my Cinderella system, it has never not worked for me in 18 months. So let me go through the process really quick, step by step. Number one, you're going to connect your actions to your intention. You're going to ask yourself, why do you want to get into bed by a certain time? Why do you no longer wish to engage in revenge bedtime procrastination? Number two, you're going to pick a word that encapsulates that intention. Joy, energy, calm, peace. So whatever your word is, when I get the 10-minute warning, I use my word to strengthen my intention. My word is happy. So I think happy. That's how I want to feel when I go to bed. And that's how I want to feel when I wake up in the morning. So my 10-minute alarm goes off. It's my words calling me Cinderella and telling me to go to bed. Someone else's words wouldn't work. It makes me laugh, right? So number three, it triggers positive emotion. Ask yourself, what system would trigger positive emotion and get you into bed? I'm laughing. I'm challenged to beat the clock. And that leads me to number four. And this part is really important. Once I'm in bed, I focus on my word happy. I get into my body and I feel the happy. I feel how proud I am of myself for keeping my intention. And that spikes positive emotion, which in turn spikes dopamine, and I celebrate that feeling. So the next morning when I wake up, I do it again. I pause, I feel the happy again, and I celebrate that I kept my intention and how good I feel because I did that for myself. So that's what starts my day out on the right foot. I'm honoring my word to myself, which feels really good. I like the feeling of spiking my own dopamine through intention and action. And so what happens is over time, I've become addicted to that good feeling. So I've trained myself to consciously seek it by getting myself into bed before midnight. So all that positive emotion means I'm leading the train instead of chasing it, and that I'm no longer making upside down parrot dresses in the middle of the night. So now my wonderful colleague, Dr. Christine Lee, is going to talk about habits.
Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Christine Lee, and I'm so happy to be with you. Thanks for showing up here. You're doing a lot for yourself and your sleep. I want to start by thanking Tracy for giving us such a beautiful presentation about the reasons why sleep is so important, and some great strategies for ADHD women to embrace sleep in a new way. I also want to thank everyone at Attitude Magazine for having us on today. So my part of this presentation is really about habits. Tracy gave us lots of different things to think about and things to change, but I'm going to give you the reasons why it's smart to change, I think, and also the steps for how to make these changes successfully. So how to change your sleep habits successfully is the title of my piece. First, it's good for us to realize that habits are like the building blocks of our lives. Habits are key to all behavior change. When you think about it, we eat out of habit. We go to the same refrigerator. We make the same breakfast oftentimes. How we work in different chunks. We take a break at lunch. How we show up. We have our particular styles of being with people. How we think. We have our certain stories about how the world works. How we perceive things. Again, we have our stories there. And even how we accept reality. This is all patterned and based on habits that we have developed over our lives. And on the surface, habits seem like an easy thing to change. But as we all know here, we oftentimes slip into old habits. Why? Old habits are super familiar. They're old. We've been using them for years. They take less effort. The reason why they're our preferred habits is because they have saved us time and effort, and they're easy to carry out. We're just really good at them. And old habits also make us feel safe. They're tried and trusted, and they've saved us from some trouble in the past. And of course, they take less time. It's like brushing your teeth at night. You know how to do it. You don't have to think about it. That's an old habit. So when we're thinking about adopting new habits, we always have to consider what are the old habits that we need to deal with in order to transition from old to new. So to start my section about teaching about what are the core components of habits, I'm going to teach you the 3 essential components of any habit. Any habit that you are currently involved in or any habit that you might want to get involved in involves 3 main sections. The first section is the cue, C-U-E. Sometimes it's called the trigger. The routine, and that's the behaviors that you carry out after the cue is fired. And then finally, the reward, what you give to yourself or what happens to you that signals that you've done the cue routine pattern and have completed the habit cycle. And since we know the 3 components of a habit, now I can teach you how to change any habit. It's quite simple, actually. All you need to do to change a habit is to change any of the 3 parts of the habit. You can change the cue, you can change the routine, or you can change the reward. Right now on the slides, if you can't see the slides and you're listening to this presentation, I have a picture of a dog on a kayak. So to change the cue, we might want to shift the kayak to a rowboat. That would change the entire context for the dog and change the entire habit that would be executed there. To change the routine, maybe instead of gently paddling the kayak, we would be having the kayak towed by a quick motorboat, and that would change the entire scene. To change the reward, well, that's easy. Instead of giving a bone or a biscuit, we might give the dog a pat on his or her head. So you can see we can change a habit in an instant. And sometimes we can get really fantastic results in a very short amount of time just by following that path. You've changed one part of a habit and you've got the whole context, the entire habit changed to the brand new habit. And sometimes those habits stick. And in this slide, I show a dog with a pair of glasses on the dog reading a magazine. And this image is meant to show you what is possible when we're really in control of our habits, and even habit stacking, when we're putting one habit on top of another to further increase your possibilities. You could train a seal to balance a ball on its nose. That's quite a complex set of habits, but people have been known to do that. And you also are someone who has lots of complex habit trains that you do without even realizing that you've trained yourself really well to a point of excellence. But what about those habits that feel really difficult to break, like revenge, bedtime, procrastination? Here's what you need to know about those types of habits. We all know that we have the desire for the new habit. You wouldn't be here at this webinar if you didn't have a craving for better sleep, or if you didn't realize that it's healthier for you to get better sleep. It's smarter for you to get better sleep. You'll be smarter. It is good for you. It's just a plain good habit to get solid sleep. And we all know that this is obviously something that we all should be aiming for. But as we also all know, desire is not enough to change a habit. It is not sufficient. We need many more things to be in play in order to change from an old habit to a new habit. We need these 3 components that I'm going to teach you here to make the newer desired habit stick. First, we need to set our vision. We need to make a goal for our habit change. It needs to be doable. You could take any one of Tracy's suggestions, but pick one. It needs to be limited. It can't be, oh, I'm going to change this, and that. It has to be limited to, let's say, your sleep habits. And it has to be singular. Again, it has to be that one thing. So you're going to limit your vision. I know most of us, including me, we want to change everything all at once. We want all the problems gone. We want all the big problems solved at the same time, right? With little effort. But I have found that when we focus on one thing, sometimes a very small thing, we have a much higher success rate. So limit your focus and go for one habit change. The second tip here is that we need to apply our effort. Sometimes we have a long to-do list, but we don't put any effort into the to-do list, and the stuff just stays there. The old habit remains the same. So what do we need to do to apply our effort? We need to put in effort daily, consistently, purposefully. That means we're sticking with that one micro habit that we've chosen. And we also have to do this with our whole heart involved. We can't just say, oh, this is really smart. My brain knows this is smart. No, you have to believe it with your whole heart and pursue the habit as if this is the only thing that matters in your life. It has to be elevated to that level. The third tip that I have for you here is that you need to believe in yourself. And I do believe that this self-belief component is something that is often missing for not only women with ADHD, but anyone who is struggling to make a behavior change. We think, oh, if I just get the coach, or if I just do the strategy, or if I just get better bedding, something's going to change. But if you don't believe that you can change your identity from someone who does the old habit and is stuck to someone who is free in their new, deliberate, chosen habit, it's not going to happen. So in order to believe in yourself, I want you to be kind to yourself. I want you to feel yourself to be super powerful, and you are. I want you to be committed to your goal and to your health. I want you to be reliable. Use whatever you need to, pieces of paper, Alexa, this webinar, coaching. Be reliable in your own life. It will really pay off. Stay strong and stay confident. And of course, there is one more thing. I taught you 3 things, but this 4th thing is really, really important. And on the slideshow, I have a picture of a lion looking really daunting in the picture. And this lion is meant to represent your old habit. In my opinion, and I think we all know this too, our old habits are always ready, raging, and roaring, wanting to come back. They don't want to be left in the dust. They are old habits for a reason. We tried them, we trusted them, we executed them so many different times. And if we slack off with our new habit and the development of our new habit, guess what happens? The old habit comes knocking on our door, wanting more time from you. And so we need to consciously fight the identity that is connected with the old habit. And we need to say, I release the old habit because I prefer the new habit, and this is the new me. So be strong when you feel like, oh, I'm going to just scroll again. I'm going to watch Love Island again in bed. Just change your habit for the better. Okay. Now, what about the revenge sleep procrastination? Here are some ideas that you can try. One, you can change the cue. Remember, I taught you about the cue routine and the reward. You can change the cue. You can set an alarm for bedtime. You can do the Cinderella technique that Tracy so hilariously taught you. You could decide to feel differently about sleep. You can say, this is a healthy, smart thing for me to do. And I now know the reasons to change my sleep habits for the better. You can journal for 5 minutes and mark that as the beginning of your bedtime ritual. You can take 3 deep breaths, which is my go-to technique with all clients to help them drop what they've been doing, separate the past from the future, and get some calm in the present moment. You can also change the routine. You can do some fun activities during the day. And guess what? When you have fun during the day, you might want to do much less revenge bedtime procrastination because you'll feel like you've satisfied your need for exercise, for novelty, and for having fun during the day. You can prioritize yourself. Sometimes we give our energy too quickly and too much to other people throughout the day. So learn to prioritize yourself during the day so you don't feel so deprived at night. And then do some tracking. I'm a big fan of tracking our behaviors so that we know that we're actually making progress. Give yourself some positive, good feedback. And then the last tip here is to change your identity to fit the sleep routine you desire. Life is your creation. You are the boss of your life. Never forget that. So decide for yourself, you're a good sleeper. You can handle the problems that are in your head in the morning. You can stick to your own plans and you have an abundance of time. When you believe these things, you're convinced of them, and you commit yourself to this process, your mind and body will follow. And then I'm going to bring this picture of this lion back to remind you that it's not the old habits that you have to be afraid of anymore. You've become the lion. You've become the powerful force in your life. So thank you so much for listening to this part of the presentation of how you're going to change your habits. I wish you all the best and sweet dreams. Best wishes to all of you from Tracy Otsuka and me, Christine Lee. And I want to invite you all to stay in touch with us. Before the Q&A, I want to send you these links to get in touch with Tracy with her fantastic podcast, ADHD for Smartass Women, and to connect with her on Instagram at Tracy Otsuka. And I have a podcast as well, Make Time for Success. You'll hear Tracy on the podcast soon, and you can connect with me on Instagram at Procrastination Coach. Thank you so much for being here. Proud of you.
Thank you so much, Christine and Tracy. That was a very informative and uplifting presentation. We do have a lot of questions that have come in, and I did want to answer. A number of people were asking about our sponsor. The sponsor is Inflow, and you can download their app now in the App Store or Google Play Store. So we do want to thank them for their sponsorship, and we'll get right to questions here. A lot of them regarding the circadian clock, and specific to this time of year. For those of us living in northern climates, the sun is setting now, and wondering about your suggestions for tools or schedule hacks that can help those of us who see the sun setting at 4:30 or earlier in the afternoon and have to get to work when it's just coming up. What can we do to make sure that we are getting the sunlight that will help us ultimately sleep better?
Absolutely. I've heard comments about, well, if you live in New York City and you've got all these high-rise buildings, what do you do? Or if you live in areas where you just don't get as much sunlight, you just have to be out there longer, unfortunately. So that would be a suggestion that, maybe during lunchtime you go and you take a walk instead of, sitting in a restaurant or sitting at your desk eating. And what I also want to say is, like the windshields I talked about sunglasses. I used to harass my son all the time, put on sunglasses, you're going to ruin your eyes. Well, it turns out I was wrong in the morning. Light does come through that kind of glass, it's just not as effective. However, if you're wearing prescription glasses or you're wearing, what are they called? Contacts, then no problem at all.
I think there's another suggestion for people who might be suffering from seasonal affective disorder. There is a light box that you can sit with for a few minutes in the morning with your breakfast. And so it's this artificial light that mimics the natural light. I would recommend that you consult a medical professional before deciding to use this, but I think it does help people who have difficulty in the winter months.
Great. Yes, very helpful, especially for those in colder climates who may not be able to be physically outside for long periods of time. That may be an important supplement.
Yes.
So the next one, on the same vein, a lot of questions regarding pre-bedtime activities. So we talked about that ideally technology should be put away about an hour before you intend to fall asleep. And some people asking whether is exercising before bed a bad idea? Is that going to ramp you up? Are there other ideas for alternative activities? Reading is the obvious one, but some people have tired eyes at the end of the day. Just some suggestions what people could do to kind of wean themselves off of screens.
Well, I think the first thing that I would say is that, again, you are the best expert on you. And we've given a bunch of suggestions, but it doesn't mean that you need to do all of them, right? You just need to try and see what actually works for you versus what doesn't work for you. So on the exercise, I'm one of those people that I get up first thing in the morning and I work out. And I'm telling you, it used to be a bit of a struggle, but because I've done it for so long, I've literally, rewired my brain. So it's not even a thought. I just get up and I go because, first of all, I know it increases my dopamine. Studies have shown to the level of a course of stimulant medication. And because I can't take stimulant medication, the exercise is what I just know when I get up, I'm not going to be able to function like I would normally be able to function if I don't work out. So I think you need to test and see, does exercise bother you? Does it affect your sleep if you exercise late in the day, or does it not? Christine, do you have any other comments on exercise?
I definitely want to reinforce what you've said, that you really have to do the experimentation and the analysis by testing. And you may want to experiment going to the gym later if that is what your schedule allows. For me, I'm the opposite of Tracy right now. I go to swim at 9 p.m. at night. And it's a little bit funny when I walk into the gym and people say, why are you here so late? But it works for me because I feel like I can fit it in then. And then I shower and I'm in bed soon after. So it works with my bedtime routine, but that just works for me. It might not work for you, but give yourself the confidence to decide, I'm going to find a way that works better than my current circumstances or my current habits allow me to have for myself. Just believe that there's something better for you, that will work with your sleep habits and energy cycles. I think that's the important thing to remember. Sometimes we don't start the experimentation because we don't believe that it's possible to change things.
I think that's such an important point. I was going to ask you next to talk on a related question that's come up quite a bit, and that is the cycle of shame. A lot of people writing in to say, they feel like it's a failure, that they can't break this cycle, and it only seems to exacerbate the problem. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Tracy, do you want to take that first?
Do you want me to start? I mean, the thing that I will always say, especially for the ADHD brain, is we literally thrive with positive emotion and we wither with negative emotion. And so all of this shame, this beating ourselves up, let it go. Focus on your strengths and forget about these weaknesses. So you're struggling to go to bed on time. I mean, I did it for decades. Really be open to this idea of, if you really want to go to bed on time, or what does on time even mean, right? You want to go to bed earlier. What can you do to create a strategy that feels good for you, that generates positive emotion for you, that you're excited about doing it for you, not for anybody else. It really starts with positive emotion, and all the shame, it needs to go because it doesn't do anything but make us feel worse, and it makes our symptoms worse. Christine.
Again, I agree with Tracy. I agree with everything she says. I have 2 points here. One is I want everyone to consider perhaps the shame is there all the time because you're exhausted, right? We kind of are aiming for better sleep, but what if the lack of sleep is actually the root of some of our mood issues, where we're feeling like we don't have the energy. We're feeling like we can't finish things. We can't follow through, or we're not showing up the way we would ideally like to. So ask yourself that question. And of course, get rid of all the shame. Notice that in both of our presentations today, we did not mention the negative emotions because we're really advocating a very positive take on behavior change and on getting to sleep on time, that it can be a forward moving, forward thinking, forward promoting process, but your attitude, yes, needs to be there too. My second point here is that our minds and bodies proceed according to our belief systems. So we want to instill in ourselves the belief that we are good sleepers, that we are capable of better sleep. And then your mind and body will follow along accordingly. So if you're sitting with a lot of shame and you're allowing it to stay with you, your body and mind are going to create habits that support that feeling of shame. And you definitely don't want that.
Wonderful points. Yes, the positivity is absolutely hitting home with a lot of our listeners today, and they're feeling empowered and ready to make change. I did want to share a bit of a really, I think, important question that we received from one listener who said that, quote, I feel my habits, especially at bedtime, have spilled over and are especially converging with my 3 teenagers' routines, including at bedtime. I feel overwhelmed trying to deal with repairing my own, let alone theirs. But I would like to make it better for myself and all of the family. So kind of that idea that your habits do not just impact yourself. It's not a question so much, but there is a follow-up here. A lot of people asking if you have advice for how to get family members on board. They're ready to make a change. They have ideas about how to change habits, but it's so frustrating when you try to get in bed early and your partner or your child or anyone really resists and gives you that pushback that makes it so much harder.
I will take this one, and I'll just say that whenever I focus on my own behavior change, I am stunned by how quickly I will see other family members' behaviors change in my direction. So without direct influence, I'm just focusing on my own lane, but that people want to support you. I think even subconsciously, if they're your family members and if things are going well, I would say. So instead of focusing teenager sleep habits, I would say put your energy into your own system first. I do believe that that's the right way to go.
Can I add that what I would do in that particular instance is I would sit down with my family and I would say, okay, we all have the same goal. What are we going to do? Include them in it. How do we make it fun? How do we make it challenging? What can we do to make it new and sparkly and novel? And get them to work with you on creating a system. But it's got to be fun. We're not going to do it if it's not fun. Have a sense of humor.
In all things in life. Sadly, we're out of time. But on that note, I just had to share one of my favorite comments ever posted to a webinar ever today. In response, Tracy, to your parrot story, someone wrote, "My parrots are always upside down." And then someone else posted, "At least when you look down at your dress, they're right side up to you." So I just love that. And I think that it reflects the positivity of today's talk and also of our attitude audience and how we can support each other in seeing things from a different perspective. So thank you both for joining us today, and thank you for everyone listening. You are what makes this community so special. And also make sure you don't miss any other. We have a full calendar lining up for 2022. If you visit attitudemag.com/newsletters, you can sign up to get alerts for all of those. If you are listening in replay or podcast mode, please visit attitudemag.com and search for podcast 382 to access the slides, the webinar replay, and the certificate of attendance option. Finally, if you support the work we're doing here at Attitude to strengthen the ADHD community, we encourage you to visit attitudemag.com/subscribe and sign up for Attitude Magazine for your family or to share with a teacher or a loved one who could benefit from greater ADHD understanding. But for now, Tracy and Christine, thank you so much for your time and expertise today and for sharing them with the Attitude community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For more Attitude podcasts and information on living well with attention deficit, visit attitudemag.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com.